how would you describe Dwayne Johnson?
When I think of Buck, I think of fake.
I would describe him as egotistical.
One of those actors who is quite rare nowadays, but you can actually call him a star.
Fake and overhyped.
Probably one of the best wrestlers there's ever been.
Probably the most famous person in Hollywood.
If you smell what the Rock is cooking.
Johnson's one of the biggest celebrities in the world. I mean, he's created a lot of things, he's been a part of a lot of things like wrestling, acting, created a lot of brands, and he's done a lot of good in those particular subjects, but he's also done a lot of bad in them, which is creating a public image that it's always about him in a sense. Which is why, throughout this documentary, I've got a question that needs to be answered. Is Dwayne Johnson in it for himself? Or is he in it for the people that he works with, and he's in it for the people that support him? And I'm going to be looking into 3 situations that will hopefully cover that, which is the Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson situation, the Black Adam and Dwayne Johnson saga, and the controversial return to World Wrestling Entertainment, aka the WWE.
I'm right here.
So, how did the Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel conflict become such public knowledge?
From my perspective, the public knowledge were quite childish throughout the Instagram website and throughout the worldwide other platforms, because they both were arguing on different platforms.
So after the Instagram post came out, a report basically stated that the two had allegedly met up to hash things out and potentially resolve their issues. By the looks of it, they hadn't been resolved, and further tensions would be happening.
Statham is steering clear of all the drama that seemed to brew on set between co-stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Vin Diesel.
After the Instagram post and the alleged meetup report came out, People magazine published a report stating something about the conflict. What was the report, and do you believe there is any credibility to that report?
The sources for the report were a little flimsy, but essentially what people claimed was that a source close to the production of Fate of the Furious came to them to kind of detail how the feud had been building over a number of months. So it was beyond that initial Instagram post where Dwayne Johnson talked about the male co-stars being candy asses and chickens, and basically questioning their kind of professionalism. So the claim from a source close to the film claimed that essentially there's lots of microaggressions building to that moment, and possibly we're looking at a clash of egos here.
Vin Diesel went on to a talk show called USA Today in 2017 to basically discuss these rumours, to basically say that they were blown out of proportion. It must have been kind of a big deal for him to go on a talk show and basically say that it wasn't blown out of proportion and basically making a statement. So in July of 2021, Dwayne Johnson officially announced that he was going to be leaving the franchise of Fast and Furious. Really, the way I kind of look at it is, if Dwayne Johnson is basically leaving, I mean, it's probably because issues were still not resolved at that time, even though issues had been building for a while anyway. And ultimately, things just did not seem resolved. So obviously after Dwayne Johnson left the franchise of Fast and Furious, pretty much I think Vin Diesel really was trying and keep things going for hope for another film, or try and keep things afloat really for the film, to make sure the film wouldn't really go down, which I don't think it did anyway. What did Vin Diesel personally do to try and possibly persuade Dwayne to go back, to possibly even put their conflict aside, just to try and make sure the film was still going to keep going?
Vin Diesel sort of took to social media a bit, really.
Vin Diesel is ready to let bygones be bygones with former co-star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The actor extended an olive branch to the former WWE star on Instagram, publicly asking Dwayne to return to the Fast franchise.
I think there's a slightly begrudging kind of plea to try and get Dwayne Johnson back in the mix.
Vin posted a photo of their characters, Dominic Toretto and Luke Hobbs, and captioned it in part, quote, "My little brother Dwayne, the time has come. The world awaits the finale of Fast 10. As you know, my children referred..."
I think a lot of this boils down to egos being hurt, I think. Because even though the Fast franchise is still going strong, the numbers since Dwayne Johnson leaving have dropped a little bit.
Did Dwayne Johnson respond to Vin Diesel not only wanting him to come back to the franchise, but what many people describe as begging him to come back?
Well, back in 2021, with some comments, as some people say, he manipulated him to come back to the franchise itself. For him to come back to the Fast and Furious franchise, I think they wanted him to come to the franchise because the Fast and Furious franchise has become quite poorly done without the character himself.
The Rock Johnson made his triumphant return to the Fast and Furious franchise.
So after all these years of tension between the two, bickering on social media, trying to get the other one to come back, the other one not wanting to come back, thinking it will descend to manipulation, Dwayne Johnson finally returned to Fast X in a cameo appearance that will eventually signal another film that will conclude the Fast and Furious franchise altogether. Now personally, I think, it's pretty hypocritical of Dwayne Johnson to pretty much go out there and say he was never coming back, create all these claims, and then to immediately come back and, it's all going to be great again. Dwayne saw dollar signs right there and pretty much was like, I'm going to work with this guy no matter whether we've still got tension.
Hey, Dwayne.
How is the relationship between Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel?
They are reconciled since the last time because they have said hi to each other in a award show, and that showcases that their friendship has grown since the last time they saw each other.
Then let the gods make their judgment.
So after years of being in development, the production was finally announced for Black Adam on April 10, 2021. And well, let's just say it was going to have its ups and downs. And certainly by the looks of it, towards the end of the production, it had more of its downs, unfortunately. A lot of hype around the film, especially both from a lot of fans' perspective, they were a lot excited for the film. Behind the scenes were a lot excited about the film, especially with Dwayne Johnson being involved. And there was even a chance that they were going to introduce a new character into the DC universe. When you're hearing something like that, do you look at it and go, yeah, pretty much just based on that alone, like, this is not going to work?
Well, for starters, I do think Black Adam and The Rock are two great, personalities in terms of, the physique and look, and I feel like even though The Rock doesn't play a lot of evil, he could have played an evil character. However, The Rock in recent years especially has really leaned towards this good persona character, even though Black Adam is fully evil and the complete opposite of this character called Shazam, who is the good guy of the series.
So after the film Black Adam wrapped up production, not too long afterwards, James Gunn and Peter Safran came in as new leaders of DC Studios. How did that new management affect the overall direction and plan for the DC Extended Universe?
I feel like it changed the way that Black Adam and the DC Extended Universe were going, because with Black Adam there was the rumours, allegations and people saying how Dwayne Johnson had changed many things during the pre-production and production, and I feel like with that James and Peter wanted just to set things straight and iron out all the issues that had come up during the pre-production and production.
So obviously after everything had happened with Black Adam, the film had been wrapped up. obviously put in post-production probably immediately or even a few weeks afterwards. Pretty much new leadership comes in and it completely changes the focus. How did Johnson react to that?
I don't think Johnson reacted very well to that. I paraphrase him, but he said that the talks of a sequel were stuck in a vortex of new management or new producers. So you're looking at a film that was within a franchise that was failing, but Dwayne Johnson looked at it as a Dwayne Johnson movie.
Why was the Black Adam film actually panned for?
The film was panned because of the slimmed script, and it was for the poor character choices.
So in terms of character development?
Yes, indeed.
Do you feel that they could have done more to develop those characters? Or was there really no hope really for that film in general?
No hope for it in general.
Absolutely. So obviously when it came to the film, it really didn't do well at the box office. It possibly lost them money. It did not meet the expectations to many, but also many people had some other criticisms. What were those other criticisms that people had?
A lot of criticism that I saw about the movie is that a lot of people thought it was generic and that there was no vision or purpose for the movie, which made the movie uninspiring and uninteresting.
So obviously there was many other reasons as to why the film didn't really work as expected, as you have detailed. But what were the other reasons for the film really not working the way it should have?
I feel like it did not work well because it did not go as expected, because it did not connect well to the DC universe as a whole, which made it feel isolating in the DC universe, causing it to feel like it's just a one-off movie.
A lot of people attribute one of the reasons to, depending on how you look at it, is apparently from the perspective that Black Adam wasn't a well-established character to the public, to a point really that people wouldn't really know too much about the character. Do you think that is a statement that would be true, or is that really something that you firmly disagree with?
Well, the same can be said about Shazam, who is the exact opposite of Black Adam in the series, and that film came out a few years back in live action as well, and that sold really well, even getting its own sequel a few years down the line. So a film about Black Adam, which did have the hype as well coming off that film, should have been an easy seller, with its own comic series selling quite well and generally getting a lot of people excited for the film. However, stuff like the premiere, which had The Rock interference once again with his own brand of tequila, with nobody buying the expensive tequila because they don't want to watch it while watching the film. They usually just want, like Coca-Cola or maybe just popcorn, not, alcohol.
Yeah.
So interference like that did ruin the film, in my opinion.
So after everything had gone down with the film, with it not really working out the way that DC had hoped it would, everything right now just seems very much uncertain, even to this day, with it very much seeming a lot likely that the film will not be renewed for a second film. But really, ultimately, Black Adam failing was ultimately the catalyst for what was about to come with his return to the World Wrestling Entertainment, the WWE, in an hope to save his reputation. Dwayne Johnson was always rumoured to take on Roman Reigns at Wrestling. And well, it looked like it was finally going to happen. So obviously after all the speculation, after years of potentially Rock facing Roman at WrestleMania, there was the rumour obviously that it was supposed to take place at WrestleMania 39. Well, Dwayne Johnson went on to a podcast show called Pat McAfee's Podcast and basically discussed how it was locked, it was going to happen. But they couldn't nail down that one thing. What do you make of that, of Johnson stating that it pretty much was on the card, it was going to happen at WrestleMania? And what do you think that one thing was that they couldn't nail it down to?
You're saying like that one thing they couldn't probably nail it down to is the storyline. The storyline in the WWE universe does change a lot. with the recent events and stuff which has happened.
So after 4 years away from the WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment, Dwayne Johnson finally returned to the WWE on the September 23rd episode of Friday Night SmackDown, basically taking down Austin Theory, fellow wrestler in the company, and had a pretty Rock segment where he made jokes about him and all this other Rock stuff that was taking place in that segment. It was quite a well-received segment, and it was pretty harmless. Or was it? So obviously, after Dwayne Johnson appears on the SmackDown in 2023, and he has that segment with Austin Theory, he then reappears on the January 1st episode, which had a segment with Jinder Mahal that was kind of teased that he was going to be there. So, did anything significant happen in that segment, and really, how did you feel coming out of that after watching that segment particularly?
I mean, as most people, I think I was hyped. Like, I was like, The Rock being back is so huge. Because, like, I mean, at this point we hadn't seen him for like years in WWE. Obviously, the most significant thing coming out of that was him kind of hinting at facing Roman Reigns, or at least wanting to face Roman Reigns with that, like, that bloodline little thing. I just think that was at the time, and what led from that I don't like, but then what led from the thing that I don't like I really like.
Now, obviously with The Rock coming back, and it looked like we were maybe going to get the match between Roman and Rock, that made it all a lot more confusing when Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble match. And really, at the time, nobody was thinking that was the match. It didn't look a lot likely. It just looked like it was a possibility down the road, or even at WrestleMania they were thinking about it. But it just seemed like Cody Rhodes was the choice because he literally won the Royal Rumble. Until it looked like he had to give that all up. After making some one-off appearances for WWE, one including him teasing a match with Roman Reigns, well, he came back again, and this time it was on SmackDown after the Royal Rumble, and it's one of the most illogical and awful segments I think I've ever seen as a wrestling fan myself. And it's basically where Cody Rhodes gives up his Royal Rumble win and says he'll challenge Roman Reigns at another time, so that Dwayne Johnson can have that spot instead and have the WrestleMania match with Roman. It made no sense. It made Cody Rhodes look like a fool, and pretty much it was looking like we were going to get that match. It looked like it was going to happen. But things probably weren't going to go Dwayne's way, and it showed.
I just think that was at the time, and what led from that I don't like, but then what led from the thing that I don't like I really like. It's kind of weird. That's how wrestling works, I guess.
So after the whole debacle happened on that episode of SmackDown, more reports started to emerge about the whole situation, learning that Rock had actually taken his place on the TKO board on January 3rd and agreed to wrestle Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. But essentially everyone was kept in the dark about it, and essentially Dwayne politicked. Well, in some sense he wanted to, you know, save WrestleMania. Did Rock listen to the people? Did they pivot to a new plan that would actually make sense and actually create captivating television?
I have made my decision. At WrestleMania 40, in the main event, I choose you, Roman Reigns.
Now, obviously, with the pivoted plan and Rock finally listening to the people, it set the stage ultimately for what was going to be an iconic Mania, and so it was, with Rock looking fantastic and having an excellent main event match at WrestleMania, teaming with his cousin Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, and also winning that night to lead to a Night 2 main event, which was the original plan of Roman versus Cody which Cody won in spectacular fashion, with interferences from The Undertaker, John Cena, Seth Rollins, loads of different people got involved, and ultimately it was just a big old mess, but a beautiful mess to cap off an iconic WrestleMania. So really too, and ultimately he made the best choice, and ultimately that's where at least sometimes Dwayne can listen.
What the Rock is cooking.